Welcome to the Developer Spotlight on the Full Dive Gaming Podcast. In the Developer Spotlight, we sit down with VR industry professionals. This week, Jay and Nat are chatting with Celine Tricart, writer and director of a new game that's coming up, Fight Back. Celine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
While we're saying thank you, we got to say thank you to our sponsor, Asterion Products. They make all kinds of AR, VR accessories. You got to check them out on Amazon if you want one of our beautiful glowing VR stands we have here. The code FULLDIVE10 will save you an extra 10% off. We're excited to have you on. It sounds like you have a lot of history in the VR industry. Can you tell us, our listeners who don't know who you are, a little bit more about yourself and what brought you into the VR world?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm originally from the film industry, actually. I was working on movies for many, many years, and I was an expert in new technologies in the film industry, such as stereoscopic 3D, which is, when you go see a movie, you put the glasses and you see in 3 dimensions. So I did that for a few years. I worked on 2 Transformers movies, which brought me from France, where I'm from, to Los Angeles, where I live now. And everybody involved in that field of 3D, we knew that VR was the next frontier, was the next step in more immersion and realism in storytelling. And so I started doing testing of 360 cameras. So that's how we call cinematic VR, when you film with an actual camera, multiple camera facing all direction. And when you put the VR headset, you're like in the movie. Usually it's not interactive or very little interaction provided. It's more like watching a documentary or a movie. So I did that for a few years. And then I got involved in a project for Oculus VR for Good. So that's, now Meta VR for Good, which is a department at Oculus that was making experiences for social good causes. And that was the first time I got to write and direct and produce in fully interactive game engine-based VR experience. So that was very successful. We won Tribeca in New York. We won the Venice Film Festival.
Wow.
And it's available for free, actually, on the Oculus store.
Nice.
So you guys can check it out. It was so successful, and it really opened my eyes to the potential of game engine-based VR again. And I've been a gamer my whole life. Like, I've literally played video games my whole life. And it was like that moment of realization of, I really love video game. I know how to use game engines. I love VR. What if, should we try making a VR game? And that's how it all started a few years ago.
That's awesome to hear about all that history in the VR. It goes back further than a lot of people realize, because a lot of people kind of think these recent years of the Oculus is where a lot started, but people have been working on this for years. And now you're working on Fight Back, which is actually going to come out on March 8th for free on App Lab. For our listeners who've never heard of Fight Back, do you want to tell us what it is?
In Fight Back, first of all, we use hand tracking. So hand tracking is this newish thing that is compatible with MetaQuest headsets, where you can see your own hands. So you drop the controllers and you just look at your hands and you will see them in VR, and you can interact and play the whole game using only your hands, not pushing any buttons or trigger. Actually, it's not just the MetaQuest. There is a few other headsets that have that enabled as well. It's very exciting. It really pushes the envelope when it comes to realism and immersion. In VR. It's super cool. So we decided to make a game using those mechanics, and it happens to be, I would call it an action adventure game, where you play a being of light. It's a very beautiful, whimsical, cosmic world. There's a super cool trailer that you can check out to see the visuals. You play a being of light, so your hands are made of light, and you manipulate powers of light. And you realize that stars in this universe, your sisters, have disappeared. They've been captured by weird creature that we call the shadows. And you go on a journey to liberate the sisters from your constellation. So 5 stars from your constellation from the shadow. And every time you liberate a star, she will teach you a new cool skill, new cool technique that you will need to fight in the next level. So think of it a little bit as, I don't know if you guys know Senseiya, the old anime where you kind of like, you climb stairs to liberate and have fights to go up in the sky. This is kind of the main inspiration for the game. It's super fun.
Awesome.
It's cool.
I love this idea of having like kind of self-defense things that you're learning while playing a game that's really fun and beautiful. And so Fight Back premiered at the Venice International Film Festival. I'd love to hear about how people responded to the game. Did you see people feeling empowered? What was that experience like?
Sure. Yes. So that's the little secret that you get to discover. Not exactly a secret, but what you get to discover through the game is that the game is actually based on the tenets of empowerment self-defense. And we're really trying to use the incredible potential of VR for learning and to build muscle memory and of course hand tracking. So you actually uses basic gesture of self-defense in the game. That's what we teach you. And the hope is as you play the game, you build up muscle memory and will be able to use those gestures in your everyday life and hopefully get excited enough about self-defense. And maybe you will discover like your untapped potential that you haven't quite knew existed by playing that game. Hopefully get excited enough that you would go and get actual training in the real world. Just want to say it very clearly, Fight Back is not self-defense training. It is just using some of the tenets of self-defense and hopefully making you excited about it. So yes, we presented Fight Back at the Venice Film Festival in September 2022, so last year. It was incredible. It was incredible because the Venice Film Festival audience is people who are not gamers. So they're very curious people about what is that virtual reality thing, let's try this. So we had a lot of people who's never tried VR before, who are not gamers, and it was kind of perfect to see them go through the journey and be completely mind blown by VR, by hand tracking, and by the game itself. And it was actually very interesting because as it's an action game where you physically fight, right? All of us were there and watching the people trying the game, and we're like cheering and clapping and like helping them through the experience, and it's because you can still hear people around you. And actually that was so nice that we went back to develop the game some more after the festival and recorded those cheers and added them in the game because it's such a great thing to feel supported, as you go through the fights.
That's so cool. I love that.
It's interesting you bring up that this is tied in with tenets of self-defense. It's not a trainer, but it is using some of those same motions. Nat and I actually took a self-defense course. It was a lot of years ago, but there was something that the instructor, who was a former police officer and a martial arts guru, had told us that has always stuck with me. This quote about how in life, there's always a possibility of violence. And so if you don't have some comfortability with violence, you haven't had any sort of training, you won't live a full and complete life unless you have that prepared in you. What do you think about that quote in relation to this?
I 100% agree with this. And a lot of people in their head think of self-defense as violence in itself, and it's like, and it's very important people understand that violence is always the choice of the aggressor, right? It's never the tool or the choice of the person being attacked. So getting trained in self-defense is definitely not abiding, violence. It's quite the opposite, actually. And the benefits of it go way beyond being able to defend yourself against an aggressor. It goes into self-confidence, the feeling of empowerment. We say sometimes that you can tell if somebody's been trained in self-defense by just the way they walk in the street, like how confident they, just the body language of it. And as for me, it literally changed my life. I was a very shy, bullied young teenager, and I decided to take Kung Fu after watching The Matrix. And learning martial arts transformed me as a woman into the woman I am today. And I've barely ever used it in real life. I still practice to this day, and now I'm an instructor myself. But it doesn't matter because it changed me in ways that I cannot even fathom. And so, yes, self-defense is getting ready for whatever could happen, but it's also transforming yourself into a maybe more confident, more empowered version of yourself. And the benefit, especially for people identifying as women, are incredible.
I just love that the Matrix inspired you to learn Kung Fu. That is so cool. I love that. Love the Matrix. I'm really excited about this game and how it's bringing that empowerment to people, and I just love like the physicality of it too, because in other, more traditional games you might be like, having your character do these things, but it's not the same as when you're actually moving. And I'm interested to hear, you kind of touched on some of your inspirations for the game. Can you tell us more about what inspired you to make this game?
Yeah, first of all, you're absolutely right in the sense that in VR is by definition a first person medium. There are some VR games or experience that is quote unquote third person. It is perfectly possible, but even if it's third person, you are still physically present, right? You're still in there. So it has a whole different impact on how you learn, or, VR is actually being used to treat phobias very successfully. And it's also used to treat PTSD. So, and it's proven to be extremely effective. The one thing I always say though is that if it can treat phobias and PTSD, it can also induce them. So it comes with an extra layer of responsibility for us game designers and creators. I think ethics are always kind of late. They're all like trying behind innovation. We just have to be very careful with what we do in the VR space when it comes to that. What inspired me to make this game is actually, unfortunately, a very sad story. Is that I lost somebody I knew who she was murdered by her ex-boyfriend, and unfortunately, it is happening every day. It got attacks against women and murder of women have actually tenfolded during the pandemic. So as of now, there is still, it's in a thing, I don't know, we think of us as living in a modern world where there is a lot of awareness about gender equality and hashtag Me Too, etc., etc. But the problem of violence against women is getting worse every year. And so there is a lot of things, there's a lot of solution. Self-defense alone is not a solution. There's a lot of things that needs to change, a lot of things that needs to be done, but it is one piece of the puzzle. And so I was extremely motivated with making this game, because if we can get a small percentage of the people playing this game to take an interest in self-defense, decide to get trained, well, those are lives that can be saved. There's actual data of like the effectiveness of self-defense for like saving lives. And so really, if we can help make a little piece of that puzzle click and get a few people interested and trained and feel more empowered and confident in their own bodies, then it would be a huge success for us.
That's really interesting what you bring up there, because that was actually something that we learned about in the training we had. Was the instructor said that even just taking the training will actually help lower the chances that you will ever end up in a situation.
Yep, 100%. This is actually super interesting to like even just that, and like just a few hours. Again, self-defense is not flying kicks. There's a lot of things that goes to it, and one of them is setting up boundaries, which is not very hard, much harder to do than we think. How to set up boundaries and how to identify red flags and go out of situation before it gets really bad. So yes, 100%.
Yeah, seeing the situation for what it could become. And also de-escalation was something that we were taught a lot. How do you handle a situation to help keep that aggressor from becoming more aggressive? Is de-escalation, does that play any role in this game? Is that possible in a VR game at this point?
It could be possible. It is not part of Fight Back, unfortunately. We had only picked like 5 basic techniques of self-defense. Actually, one of them is setting boundaries. So we have the non-violent or pre-violence technique in there, but we don't have de-escalation. And actually, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of things, and especially the vocal techniques of what to say in a ways that de-escalate the situation and prevent, future violence. So yes, this is also a very big part of self-defense.
It's really interesting because I've had different kinds of trainings around this, and such a big part of it is just like de-escalation, getting out of the situation and things like that. And the physical part is only one part. I think it makes a lot of sense that that's what you're bringing into VR and bringing those movements and everything into it and increasing people's confidence. And we've talked a little bit about the hand tracking in this game. How important is it to have the hand tracking in the game versus controllers for teaching these practical self-defense skills?
Excellent question. So the game can be played with controllers, so that's absolutely fine. Especially hand tracking is a bit finicky. I have good hopes that it will get much better in like the course of the next year. But you need to have good lighting condition. You need to have good contrast between your hands and the background. You know, there's a lot of those things that can impact the quality of the experience. So that's why you can always switch to controllers if you want to. The reason why we wanted to do it hand tracking from the get-go is two reasons. First of all, this is about physical empowerment, and clearly using your own hands and seeing your own hands makes a big difference. Suddenly all that we far less removed than what we would be like when you play a video game with a controller, where there is that kind of separation, right, between us and what's going on, even if it's first person. So it's your own hands, you're fighting, and we're using the superpower of light. So it's really fun to see when you do the correct gesture, those like VFX and particles and stuff that spark, and really makes you feel like a superhero. And you even like feel it on your skin. It's like tickles a little bit, you know? So that was reason number one. Reason number two is we really wanted to try and make that game accessible to even non-gamers. I'm a hardcore gamer. I have no problem with buttons and triggers and stuff, but it's been my understanding that some people who come from more casual gaming or not gaming at all sometimes figure out push the A button. Okay, what does that mean? You know, and I've put a lot of people in headset over the years of going to festival and showing my work to people. I've seen thousands and thousands of people putting a headset for the first time and fidgeting with the controls, not understanding what to do. And so it was also kind of like, okay, well, now it's your own hands. And we had to design the game in the way that it's very tricky, by the way, when you do a game and you don't have any buttons. It's like, shit, well, how are we going to design this? How do we open the menu, for God's sake? It's just really hard. So we had to redesign all the interaction and the inputs, but also I think that it's going to make it much, much easier for non-gamers and beginners to get a hang of the game.
Yeah. I've seen that with hand tracking too. We've actually helped demo VR at conventions, and when you can put someone in a hand track game, it's just so much easier when they're new to VR. For our listeners out there who aren't seeing this on YouTube, aren't seeing the trailer, I want to make one thing clear. This is not Drunkn bar fight. You're not in with real people approaching you and getting in your face. This is made in such a way that you're seeing these like celestial beings. And it's really cool that you decide to do that, because it doesn't feel like a threatening experience on the surface when you look at it. But I see how in the trailer you are using defense and you're being empowered to still combat these beings that are coming after you, but it's not someone's in your face. How did you come up with that design, and how does that play into all of this?
No, that's a very, very, very good point, because we didn't want people to get really scared and have the opposite effect. We were trying to get people to have fun and feel strong. And the opposite effect is you feel like shit. You feel really bad and you feel terrible, and you know, you're like, oh, I'm terrible at this, blah blah blah. So very quickly we decided to stay away from realism and be in a completely poetic, metaphorical world. So that was step number one. Those shadows, they attack you and by absorbing your light, and your light are your power. So it's all a giant metaphor, obviously, but it is revealed that the shadows are just as those little voices that you hear in your head. So you're fighting yourself in the game. You're fighting those thoughts that tell you that you're not strong enough, that you're not good enough, that you're not going to make it. So you're fighting them. So those are not some kind of monsters chasing you or some kind of stranger attacking you in a dark alley. You're very much encouraged to fight those dark thoughts and regain your light and shine as much as you can.
I love that so much. That it's so nice to bring this into like more of a positive light. And I think that can help people in so many ways, because, you know, we have all these negative thoughts that come up all the time. And this is almost like, you know, like a way of training your brain to like, hey, you know, you can use these concepts for anything to help bring more positivity, which is really great. And I feel like when I play this game, I'm probably going to be bawling during it because I love things that just feel empowering. So I'm really excited for that.
I'm excited for you to try it too.
Something you brought up there, it brought up something really personal in my mind, and I'm surprised I'm going to share this on the podcast right now. But you mentioned how you didn't want people to feel bad when they got in and tried this, and if it was a real person they were going up against or something, it would be more scary and it wouldn't feel good to have to fight them. And as a kid, I had a lot of really bad dreams. And in my dreams, there was always someone coming at me. And no matter if I was hitting them with some object or punching them, or what I did, it never hurt them, probably due to some rough things in early childhood. But because of that, I just randomly, when I tried Thrill of the Fight for first time in VR, and I was throwing punches in that I thought were very effective punches and very fast and hard, and it just seemed like they weren't doing anything to my opponent, it kind of brought back that into my mind and made me feel really bad in the game, and like I was ineffective and I was powerless and helpless, and it felt really awful. And since then, I've been doing a supernatural VR boxing, and then that you're not fighting people. You have these objects coming at you. You see if your percentage or your speed has gone up and down. And I've seen, after 6 months of doing it nearly every day, my percentages and everything are really high in it now, and I feel really good about that. But I still am worried about trying to go back to Thrill of the Fight again after how that made me feel. So I want to praise and really tell you that was a really wise decision you did to make this a really positive experience with these celestial looking beings in these shadows, where it's not actual people you're fighting and potentially feeling powerless in the situation.
Yeah,
that was a tricky line to we were really trying to keep it fun and challenging, but remove those negative emotions. So another things that we did, there is no game over. It was very important to us because what does that mean? It's horrible what it could mean in the metaphor, So it's like when you don't have any light left, you are taken in this like bubble of light where you are told to like control your breathing and like relax for a minute. And then you do a special gesture that we teach you, which is actually like the traditional martial arts, salute. And you do that gesture for a few seconds and it will like replenish. So you always have more light. So you will never run out of light. You just need to like take a moment and relax and then go back in the fight. So that was also an important thing for us. It's no game overs.
I love that. I am so excited. I'm even more excited than I already was to play this. I can't wait. I'm glad that it's coming very soon. So awesome. I'm definitely gonna I'm gonna be like, I love things that feel empowering, like there'll be like a song lyric that's something like that song from Frozen. I'm always like, oh my gosh, like anything that's people like getting their power or getting their power back, I just love. So I'm so excited.
Thank you. I just want to add also that we actually recorded the voices and everything, the characters in 3 languages, because I don't like subtitles in VR. So we have French, English, and Spanish, and it was just important for us that it was again accessible to as many people. I wish we could have done way more languages. Hope maybe it will come down the line. I don't know, but for now, it's those 3 are dubbed in those languages.
That's awesome.
That is really cool. And I think that from what you've said here and from some of the experience we have talking about with self-defense and stuff too, you've taken some really interesting concepts and weaved them into something that people will probably see as a fun, approachable game. They may not even realize what all the story is that they're learning or taking on here. But I am really impressed by what you've done and how much thought you've put into this. It definitely shows that it's personal to you.
Super personal, yeah. And it doesn't matter if you understand the metaphors when you play the game or if you get all of it doesn't matter, right? It's just every little piece participates into building that experience. And if you're just fighting shadows and kicking their butts, it's perfectly fine.
Yes. Oh, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you about this. I'm very excited for this to come out on March 8th. Is there anything else you were hoping we'd make sure we'd talk about while we're here? Anything else you wanted to share?
No, listen, I'm just really excited for people to finally try it. We've been working on it for many years. We actually are continuing. There will be more coming down the road. I can't say more about it, but this has really opened the eyes of a lot of people on the potential of hand tracking and that specific universe that we've built. So we are working on something new and super excited. But for now, it's March 8th, International Women's Day. Let's raise awareness about physical empowerment and self-confidence for anyone identifying as women, and hopefully they get to have fun.
Go download it and try it out today and let us know what you think. But thank you again. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you. This has been so great. I'm so excited.
And if you're out there listening, you can come join our Discord, or you can come see this on YouTube. Tell us in the comments what you think when you get a chance to try it, because I think this is a really cool concept, and it's showing us a little bit of the future of where VR will start to meld a little bit of that gaming side and real life training side. There's a lot in the future. So if you haven't gotten to VR yet, it's time. Just dive on in.
Dive on in.